So a lot of you think it's no big deal if we have impatient parents and guardians around. Well, maybe we should kind of think about how it looks to have to put up with a lot of situations in our society. We should probably also kind of think about just all the weapon episodes we've had, like the Columbine High School one or the Tucson tragedy. Maybe, and maybe even other episodes with those weapons. We should also think about the Oklahoma City episode. Impatient parenting is responsible for all of that, and I think you should know that. Impatient parenting is a case where a parent or guardian is disparaging a child and just kind of thinking it's acceptable just because they have developmental delays or just because, a genetic is missing to be able to do things. Well, that's not okay. It's really, really poor. It's not acceptable at all. I mean, just think about it. There's some things you gotta keep in mind. You can never be trusted in what you can teach your child and know beyond just understanding. Because since we've counted out more than 500 of neurophysical issues, believe it or doubt it, you know what? That's way too many to have under one category of understanding. It's not possible. But what would it be worth anyway? I mean, maybe there's something else wrong with the situation. Lying is actually the one thing that kind of shows you don't understand. And it's usually not before they've lied that they would do that. And see, you wouldn't even be able to teach them about how to use things safely. They'd probably think it's acceptable to use things like weapons all the time. And if they can't be in the mainstream just because things are wrong, that's not nice. I mean, a lot of people do deserve the mainstream more than anything. But you just gotta keep in mind that without the mainstream, we can't do anything great in our community, Think about that. It doesn't sound right to have these things get out of hand the way they do. You gotta really understand what you're doing right or wrong. And you wouldn't be able to know primary wrongdoings from secondary wrongdoings too well easily. Because a wrongdoing is primary if there's nothing known to cause it, if it happens quite a lot all the time. There'd be a lot of incidents based on authoritarian control all the time. Did you know that authoritarian control is responsible for at least 85% of all the backfields in motion, i.e. kind of sneaking off and doing things? Well, a lot of them do that because, you keep them from something just because you want to do it, and that's mean, because then we can't get things. No one really wins there. People just lose all, and that's just plain bad. And you can't people speak or write kind things to people even in unfair situations. I mean, you wouldn't be able to do that. And they'd be threatening people quite a lot because they have junked up. They're so dented up by such impatient situations. I mean, just because a mistake happened doesn't make anybody stupid, Gotta keep that in mind. If you take a look at all these dominoes here, you could probably see that how impatient parenting really affects it. So, and if it starts getting out of hand, see, one of these, when it falls over, it knocks the rest of them over too. It's a chain reaction. You don't really have a choice. So therefore, your child is in a healing process and you just forget that they did that just because something went wrong. You just knock over everything that goes with it. Can't leave impatient parenting untold. It's not safe. It doesn't prove anything right. And if you take a look at this simple graph situation, you'd be surprised at how things get used up so easily. If you don't take the time to use resolution on enough wrongdoings, you would never be able to know what's right or wrong. You would never be able to know primarily wrong from secondarily wrong. That's one of the factors of tolerance. So being tolerant is required because that was one thing that people needed to be able to get a grip on. You would never be able to know primary from secondary if you were recessive to tolerance at all. You wouldn't be able to get a grip on it too well. So that's kind of the way it goes. You gotta keep that in mind. You see, if you keep using a punishment on something and you find it's not doing anything, you find nothing, you're just wasting people down. And if you think that somebody's patenting from a consequence has an exception to that, you better be wrong, because if it happens so frequently, it will false out the right-of-way they have. That would not look good. Their right-of-way is always right. See, that helps lock you into using resolution when you should. That's why they taught you how to resolve in grade 4, 5, and 6, where you can write down what went wrong. That's important. You don't rely on point sheets anymore after the 3rd grade. You have to be able to resolve. That's where you probably get to the point of maybe maybe writing a paper on what done wrong. You see, there's at least 100 times more wrongdoings in the world than there are punishments to cover them all, and the ones that we're allowed to use in the United States cover no more than 75% of them all. The other 25 are counteractable only through resolution. So therefore, if you don't teach somebody how to resolve, you're just making it into too big a deal. And if you make it into too big a deal, then things don't work the way that they should. And that just messes everything up. You just end up having to fight the situation time and time again. If you don't show respect for the one who has the right of way and being excused from the penalty that you're offering, you could end up with a bigger penalty yourself. You could end up having to pay a fine for disrespecting right of way that they were given. That's the way it goes. Now this picture, however, kind of shows you the steps to solving a problem, and as a matter of fact, that's one thing you have to do with your own parents. Where you see the stop sign, that means stop and think. Is that how you want somebody to handle you in that situation? See, you can't just go and give people a bad time just because they made a mistake in their ability to be responsible. That's not nice. Somebody else could do that to you just as good and make you feel bad, make you feel a fool. You also have to state your problem. I mean, you may have a hard time with the fact traffic is congested or there's a lot of snow, but that does not excuse you to flip out on your child, take the situation out on them by telling them to be quiet. That's mean. Maybe somebody should do that to you and see how you like it. There's 5 different choices you can do. You got the bright smile, the straight face, the sad face, and the heavy sad face. And behind each one, it goes from sun, partly cloudy, cloudy, rainy, thunder, and lightning. See, flipping out on anyone just because you're frustrated, that's a very rainy way to act. If you say something demeaning, that would be thunder and lightning. You could really get in trouble that way. Flipping out or take a situation out on your child, that's just a good way to get yelled at. No, that's not good. If you do the right thing and maybe just politely ask that maybe we discuss it later in spite of your frustration, you can do a real good job. You can do that pretty well. And if you talk to someone about their feelings when they make mistakes, you have a better chance of getting enough friendship in them. That's the right thing to do when people make mistakes. And then you get a gold star in the end for doing the right thing. And then there's a couple different ways we can help encourage people to stop being impatient and raising children. Because if you do, you get more trust in what you know beyond understanding. You're not as likely to teach them to use weapons or anything in the wrong way. You get in the mainstream, primary from secondary. Won't be so much need for authoritarian control, and you can talk them to teach them how to speak right and listen others. And then you get a medal later on. But there's something I want you to pay close attention to and listen carefully. If there is a chance at all, it's been reported that you've been using a stick to spank your child, there's going to be some serious consequences, which means your hand will be locked in a synchronized talking bracelet, which means for every time you pick up the nearest thing to a stick, it's going to make it sound like that stick's talk to you, and it's going to scare you mad. You're going to be frightened. You're going to be feeling scared and purple if you're not careful. And then you also got to think about, because the same thing will also happen if you just ragedly take things away just because of something of a reaction. Because it'll make what you're taking away look like it's alive, and it will scare you purple. You're going to go, whoa, and you'll probably wish you'd never taken those things in the first place. And the deal is, if you think it's wise to just walk out over a reaction, you're going to be in synchronized tightening leg braces, which will tighten and make you think somebody grabbed you. Then there's going to be an automated intervening machine listening to you panic, and it'll laugh, and then it'll tell you kind of what you're doing wrong. The automated intervening machine, if you will be there, if it's reported you've been talking unkindly to your child, and that means you won't have any privacy with them anymore. That means if you say anything bad, you will be told to apologize, and that's that. So I want you to keep that in mind and see how it sounds.